Mike Colter is back, and Harlem has a new hero. Just how good is this show? So good, it broke Netflix. It's the season premiere of Marvel's Luke Cage, Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to our coverage of the latest Marvel entry into the Netflix universe, Luke Cage. And boy is it good, and yes, I am right when I'm telling you the truth when I talk about it breaking Netflix. Second day it is out on Netflix. So many people are watching this show, it blew out their servers. They were having interruptions all day, so that is just a clue into the show. Of course, I know you have already checked out because we're just here talking about it. So there are spoilers ahead, just so you've all been warned. All right, so let's get right into it. So we are taking place 5 months after the events of Jessica Jones. Luke Cage is living up in Harlem now, working, one of his multiple jobs is working for his father-in-law, Pops, who owns the local barber shop, a respected figure in the neighborhood. He is an ex-gangster himself. Did the bad deeds himself, went to jail, kind of came out a changed man, and is now running a barber shop, sort of providing a place for a lot of the local youth to hang out, to learn to grow, play video games, any way to get out of the dangers that are in the street. Now, Pops here in this, of course, is representing the redemptive character, the redemptive arc for Luke Cage. Even starts out from the very beginning, he is pushing Luke into using his abilities to help people. Why don't you help the people like those guys downtown? And of course, Luke, very resistant to that. But that's kind of the constant push that Pops is providing throughout all of this. You can do more. Why aren't you doing more? Very much kind of in the same lines as, it's not with great power, with great responsibility. More of the current bend over, the current twist on that is, if you have the ability to do something and you don't do something, if something bad happens, it's on you. And that is really more of the push that Pops is giving for Luke throughout the opening 2 episodes. So while Pops sort of represents the redemptive side, the antagonist is represented by nightclub owner Cornell Stokes, aka Cottonmouth, which actually happens to coincidentally be the location of Luke Cage's other job. He's under the radar right now. He's still kind of a wanted man, so he has to work for cash. He has to work at places that will hire and pay that way. So kind of fun that he is working the good side with his father-in-law during the day, and at night is working in the sort of gangster's keep. Now, Cottonmouth is the local big man, big gangster, really runner of guns primarily, but has his hands in a lot of other things, protection rackets and such. He is the gangster side, as it were, of the antagonistic relationship. The other side being his cousin, which is Mariah Dillard, the councilwoman played by Alfre Woodard, just beautifully. Lots of French. In fact, the entire cast in this is astounding. But Mariah Willard is kind of a perfect local politician in the sense is that she has her hands in everything. She has her finger on the pulse of the neighborhood. She knows everybody and yet still sees them so far beneath her. Really represented in that beautiful scene where she is talking with all the kids and knows everybody and what they want. And as soon as she turns, it's, antiseptic spray on the hands and let's clean it off and move on. Let us not get ourselves dirty dealing with those lower classes. So really a great setup of the underworld plus the overworld, the ties of that in that Luke Cage is coming up against. And of course, also caught in the middle between these forces of good and evil is police detective Misty Knight. So awesome to see Misty Knight on the screen. And sort of a great introduction. I love the interplay and chemistry between her and Mike Colter. By the way, probably not that difficult. That is a fine looking man with a very sweet smile. I think Mike's ability to portray the toughness and the soft side was just wonderful. And it was really great seeing that pairing up with him and Misty Knight. And I'm kind of curious, with Misty there's a certain sadness that seems to be popping in with her eyes. I think there's, we're already starting to see a little depth of story, a depth of character. There is something going on in those looks, those moments away, those moments alone, where there's really a lot of depth going on. And I can't wait to see really more of this character and kind of dive into that backstory, as well as, everyone else's, and see how Luke Cage became Luke Cage. So primarily the first 2 episodes of the series really dealing with setup, really dealing with crafting the neighborhood, what the conflicts are, who the people are, what the actual world is that we're going to be diving into. And in some ways, this is one of the things with a lot of the Netflix series that they have been pushing, because they are so used to people binge watching. They can take time in doing their setup. They know you're going to go through a couple of episodes at least a night, so they can kind of stretch things out. Now, this can present pacing issues, which was a minor thing. As I said, there was a lot of setup going on, and it's such an exciting world. It's such a colorful world. It's really wonderful to kind of dive into here and sort of see where everything is. And part of the great sculpture is not, of course, the great camera work, which is endemic of these series, and the wonderful use of color. One of the things that Daredevil did, and followed up by Jessica Jones, is the brilliant splashes of color in the background that give it a sort of comic feel without things being comic-y. It just gives that splash of primary colors in the background that really sort of up the ante in the games of the sort of visual world that we're jumping into. And this show is by no means any different. They are, though, adding the layering of music. Music is something that is very integral from the first shots of the show, showing the neighborhood, through the Cotton Club, through the Harlem. Just when he said Cotton Club, that was exactly the thoughts that I had with it, that kind of mixture of places where you have everybody is coming in, and amazing music. I think one of the reasons why Mariah Dillard, even though she's not supposed to be down there and mixing with all of the criminal types, can't stay away from the club. Too much good music. But that inhabits really every scene, and it really brings a whole level of immersion in with this world. I think it was wonderful choices. It's a great soundtrack. Okay, and I've got one more slight criticism, then I think I'm done. Part of the great use of music, though, is sometimes the transition music, the little stingers and such, sometimes gets a little jarring. Often it's a perfect overlay from one scene to another. Occasionally, though, it gets almost overly dramatic, almost melodramatic. It starts to feel like a telenovela or a bad spaghetti western, where the music just suddenly blares in. Just there's that one scene where Cottonmouth walks into the barber shop with shades and tone, and it was just it was kind of jarring. There's a couple of those where the musical riffs jump in, and it is almost confusing as to what is the tone that's being set. There's a very serious tone, a very engaging tone, and then sometimes the music jumps in, and it gets a little confusing. Now again, this is a minor criticism for something that is overall, for the most part, really beautifully done. Again, the music selections, for the most part, really key everything in and very much have the sound of the urban city. And I think this is something that is a great exposure to most people that don't get a chance to really dive into this world. But as I said, these first 2 episodes especially are the tale of Luke sort of turning things around. And Mike Colter does an excellent job of really characterizing a person who is trying to avoid trouble, trying to just be a good person. He is smart, he is well-read, he's knowledgeable of the world and of the dangers in the world, and he does not want to get involved. And of course, the sequence of events that happen with the boys and the gun thief and all of those dealings, which eventually lead to that sort of tragic ending in episode 2, really are just illustrating the pushes and pulls of the world around him that sort of force him into this position. But I wouldn't even really say so much of force, because especially that scene with Genghis Khan's, when he goes in and takes out those first 4 guys, that really isn't motivated so much by major external forces of just what's going on in the neighborhood. Yes, these are Cottonmouth guys, and yes, that they are working, to raise money for Dillard, and that's that whole bigger picture thing. But really, these are some guys roughing up a couple of business owners, people that he knows, and he is not the type of person that can stand by and just let that happen. And I think they do a great job of illustrating that aspect of his character. That it's his character that pushes him in, while he tries to avoid it for as much as possible, but still willing to get his hands dirty. I mean, there's also the scene in the barber shop when Stokes is there with shades and Tone, and he comes out with the towels, and he looks at Pops and says, I got clean towels. Do you want me to take the bad ones out? It's no problem. And we saw him walking through, counting how many steps from each person, who is armed, how quick is it going to do. Really, again, using that mind to really perceive the environment. And I think all of this really structures everything up perfectly. So, of course, once things do go down, and once you find out that Pops is killed at the end, that is the last straw for it. And at that point, Luke Cage is now there. He is now the new protector of Harlem. All right, couple of Easter eggs and tidbits. The opening scenes where Pops is talking to Luke Cage, and with all of his nicknames. One, of course, is Power Man, which is one of Luke Cage's superhero identities. So, I don't know, also fun. And then we have the scene in Genghis Connie's where she offers to pay him, we want to hire you, and Luke's response is, I'm not for hire. Also, a nice quick little foreshadowing play to Luke's eventual founding of Heroes for Hire, in which case he would be for hire. One of the books that Luke is reading, Invisible Man. If you're not familiar with that, that is not the sci-fi Invisible Man character popularized by those old Universal films.
Oh, crazy to know who I am, aren't you? All right, I'll show you. There's a souvenir for you. And one for you. I'll show you who I am and what I am.
No, not that one. No, this is Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. It was written in 1952. It is a modern story of a man in the inner city in a time where racism is still heavily prevalent in the culture. He is invisible because he is a black man, and people do not see him because of the color of his skin. It is a classic read. I would highly recommend it. I actually had to read it in high school. I did not fully appreciate it at the time, but it has something that has stuck with me over the years, and I do still think about it. So highly recommend you looking that up if you're unfamiliar with the book. That scene in the beginning of episode 2 in the barbershop when Luke and Pops are talking about various authors, Donald Goines, Walter Mosley, Chester Himes, those are all crime authors. Well, Chester Himes wrote Rage in Harlem, but Lahane's big crime author, he wrote Mystic River and Shutter Island. Donald Goines, of course, a big early black writer, did a lot of very gritty urban stories, and then later on, under an assumed name actually, wrote the Kenyatta series that Pops again talks about after that there. So a lot of mystery, crime novels going on. In fact, Walter Mosley, who has wrote the book Little Green that Luke Cage is reading right there, writes the character for Easy Rawlins, who was in Devil in a Blue Dress, and very positive character. And in fact, Little Green, the book that he is reading, is the sort of resurrection of Easy Rawlins. Easy Rawlins apparently had killed himself in the one of the previous books, Blonde Faith. And this is sort of his coming back. They discover he is not quite dead, and his sort of return back to the investigative life, which in many ways is kind of a mirror for Luke Cage, also kind of in a coma out since his last life, and is now being rebirthed and returned into sort of a new heroic form. And Crispus Attucks that Luke Cage is talking about at the beginning and the end of episode 2. Yes, he was the first victim of the Boston Massacre, and as such is considered the first casualty of the American Revolutionary War. All right, I think that's going to wrap it up for this review. Going to have some more reviews coming up the next few days to cover up the rest of the series. There are 13 episodes in all. Probably going to do 3, maybe 4 episodes per review. I'm just going to see how the rest of the series plays out. I want to do it in chunks that sort of make sense. So just pay attention, keep an eye on the page, and those will be coming out, like I said, in the next few days, over the next week or so, probably overall. If you did enjoy this review, go ahead and hit that like button right down there. You can hit the subscribe button right here. Come back for all the rest of those reviews. Also, we are doing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on ABC on Tuesday nights. Reviews come out on Wednesday. And we'll be covering The Walking Dead when it returns on October 23rd. And we're also going to be covering HBO's new series, Westworld. So go ahead and check back at the page, hit that subscribe button. You can come back for all of those. You can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Darren Jakes. There it is right there. Otherwise, like I said, I think this is going to be it for now. I am D, and I am out of here. You guys take it easy. Bye-bye.